After years of waiting following this game's reveal about 3 years ago, Stellar Blade has finally released this year. I will say that after getting all of the different endings you can achieve, I ended up really liking this game. Despite my gripes with its story and characters, which I will definitely get into, Stellar Blade has such a satisfying gameplay loop that I just cannot get enough of. I currently have 90 hours of playtime with 3 playthroughs so far, and my interest in the gameplay hasn't waned even a bit. Like, seriously, the gameplay has to be studied. And I think the art direction does so much for this game and really complements the post-apocalyptic world Stellar Blade has gone for. If you aren't aware, this game is compared to Nier Automata a lot and is also one of its biggest inspirations. But does this game really live up to Nier Automata? I had been keeping my eye on this project literally every chance there would be news about its development. This character, Eve, was just so badass every time we would see more of the game. And her design was very appealing for, well, many different reasons. But it was that mixture of its visually stunning art style and gameplay that really gave me the sense that, oh yeah, I am going to love this game. And I did. Initially, what was thought by many to be a full-on Devil May Cry action combat game turned out to be a sort of Souls-like mixed in with a little bit of hack and slash as well. I actually like to call this a stylish Souls-like, as the combat does have elements you would see in games like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, or hell, even looking at games like Final Fantasy XVI with its cooldown abilities. Except with Stellar Blade, the use of abilities are determined by how much beta or burst energy you have stored. And to build this up, you can hit enemies, do perfect parries, or perfect dodges. And this gives the player yet another reason to really do better in combat all of the time. I think the demo itself really made the combat feel slow and sluggish in comparison to the marketing material. But as you progress through the game naturally, the combat really does open up, with some abilities even giving Eve a supercharged speed boost during battle. The different skills that you unlock as you progress through the game really smoothen out combat to where it doesn't feel as clunky as in the beginning. So for those who were complaining that the combat was too slow and feared that it might stay that way, well, you can rest easy. The gameplay might not be as fast-paced as a stylish action game and may not be as hard as a Souls game. I believe that Stellar Blade has found itself right in the middle to where it can still offer a challenge while still giving you that power trip. And it's exactly for those reasons that even after my 90 hours of playtime so far, that the gameplay loop still hasn't dried out for me yet. So when we're talking about the overall game design, from the exploration to the side quests, open zones, and even the levels, Stellar Blade does a fairly decent job overall. It never feels like something is dragging on for too long, or that one area of the game is noticeably lacking in comparison to something else, at least gameplay wise. When it came to side quests, while they did throw a lot at you at once, it's not like they ever force you to do a single one before moving on to main story stuff. And the side quests themselves can be good, but they're definitely hit or miss. For instance, sometimes you'll just get quests that are just go here and find this person, and then you go there, find that person, and they're dead. And I swear to you, you'll be having a bunch of quests where at the end of it all, you just end up finding dead people. I mean, even outside of side quests, you find corpses just lying around. around. Yeah, this world is far from what you would call a paradise. However, while you have side quests that may be a bit formulaic like those, every now and then you'll run into some that develop into something really interesting. One of my favorites being the storyline from Sue and Enya. From what starts out as despair and hopelessness quickly turns into a story about identity, love, and moving beyond your fate despite all the hardships you had faced. It's an awesome questline that actually intertwines nicely with Eve and her story as well. Stellar Blade also does that thing where it splits into multiple forms of exploration / linear mission type formats. You see this a lot in other games where the level sections aren't in the same instance as the open world areas, and so you'll probably go through a loading screen or a cutscene that takes you to the level itself. I will say that each stage felt interesting enough to where it didn't feel too linear to the point where you couldn't explore anywhere. There are different paths that can lead you to more loot, data entries, or surprise surprise, more dead people. But that just means more loot for us. However, the way in which these levels were spread throughout the game almost felt formulaic in a way, as you'd go from open zone to ruin, then back to open zone, and then a ruin again. I think later in the game the levels do get a bit more interesting and more open, such as the secret mission on ADOS 9 with Lily or the orbit elevator. And on my second playthrough, I definitely felt the ruin levels that would restrict the use of your sword getting very tiring to go through. Now, if it wasn't for Stellar Blade prioritizing the fun factor first and foremost, those gripes that I just had would have been a lot more significant. Because not only is the gameplay satisfying, but they also capture that spirit of old video game magic. And what I mean by that is games that just do something for the sake of fun, even if it's straight up wacky and makes absolutely no sense at all. You'll just have these random sections where Eve is literally just skating on her sword. You gotta love when these games are self-aware that they are still video games at the end of the day. You also have collectible cans that you can find literally anywhere in the game. Now, I'm not one to go out of my way to find collectibles in games, but in this case, I might have to. I mean, just look at this animation Eve does every time she collects a can. And even the more relaxed activities like fishing that you unlock midway through the game. It feels like I should be questioning why this super soldier from space who's never been to Earth is just a natural at fishing. But I won't, because it's just that type of game and we love it for that. It really harkens back to how video games used to be back in the PS2 era, where things would just happen and make absolutely no sense, but like, who cares? And it's because of Stellar Blade putting the fun front and center that my other issues with the story and characters really don't affect my enjoyment of this game. Now, looking at the overall narrative and characters as a whole, while interesting, it is very predictable and it honestly had way more potential than what we got. Now, I did enjoy the lore and world building we get from logs and posters scattered throughout the game. However, it felt like we were thrust into a conflict with all these characters without really ever getting the full picture. Our main characters, Eve, Lily, and Adam, all feel like wasted potential. Because while they were likable, the game doesn't do a good job of fleshing out these characters enough for me to really get emotionally invested in them. Like, Eve is a great base for a character. She is this super soldier who knows nothing about Earth and her only goal is her mission, at first. But a character named Taki, her commander and friend, was killed right in front of her by a Naytiba, their sworn enemies. And so now they've set up this revenge plot for Eve. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. The whole revenge plotline really does nothing for Eve as a character. When you look at a game like Nier Automata, I think what made 2B so much more interesting is the fact that under her cold exterior, you could tell that 2B always had an inkling of humanity in her. But because of the way they live, the way they're made, they are self-aware that emotions are prohibited. But because of the way in which Nier Automata plays with that idea, and how both 9S and 2B form their bond throughout the story and spite of that really makes for an impactful experience. With Eve, it's like she just arrives on Earth, and as soon as she gets to Zion, she's willing to be friendly with anyone. And I get that her mission is to save mankind and all, but that's also the primary goal of Nier Automata as well. I want to feel like Eve is really foreign on this new planet, that even though she needs to save humanity, that she'd probably struggle with how humans interact with her and so on. Hell, I'd say all the characters are who they are for almost the majority of the game. Eve wants revenge and to complete her mission, Lily is your engineer with a bubbly personality, and well, Adam is a character that does go through a change, but it's in no way satisfying for his character because it's just so predictable. The Eidos 9 mission does shed some light on Lily and what she was up to before Eve rescued her, but that's literally it. All these characters have no real significant growth for the majority of the game. We have revelations in the story that make the party question if what they're doing is right, but it never explores that more. The characters just go back to, well, all we have to do is complete the mission, in my bad Eve impression. Now, I know it seems like I hate these characters, but I really don't. Like I said, they have so much potential. And in the latter half of the game, right up until the end, I really found myself growing more fond of Eve and Lily. Now, while the majority of the game can be a bit messy in its writing, especially for its characters, the ending for the game is pretty damn cool, and the biblical references here even more so. To Adam almost fighting Lily in one ending, to Adam and Eve fusing to create one being in another. It's this true ending where Adam and Eve fuse that Stellar Blade 2 will potentially continue from, as Eve now has Adam inside her, with the fate of humanity now weighing on her shoulders to create new memories for mankind. However, the main antagonist of the story, our very own Mother Sphere, had always been watching over her angels. And because of our decision, she tries to force Lily's exosuit to kill Eve. But with her newfound perspective on life from Eidos 9 and her journey with Eve, Lily was able to use Iberis's hacking solution to break free from Mother Sphere's control and escape to safety. And now, with nothing to hold back Eve, she was able to utterly dismantle Providence with her full power. Now escaping the nest, Mother Sphere appears before both of our characters to express how disappointed she is in Eve's final decision. Of course, Mother Sphere would stop at nothing to achieve her goal in her own way of humanity's survival, their evolution, just as her father, Adam, had taught her. Now that the ending she had predicted came to be, she declares the Eve protocol complete. Not even a moment later, she sends drop pods of other airborne squad members to carry out her wish, to destroy Eve and what she had become. With no hesitation in sight, Eve spreads her wings, or wing rather, with blade in hand and easily dispatches her enemies all through the night. While that was transpiring, Lily had returned to Zion to install the final hyperdrive, and as a result, restoring energy to the sleeping citizens. Meanwhile, Eve's battle had finally come to an end. A dawn of a new future is now in sight. Eve, now free from being controlled by a false god and instead being the guardian angel to the people of Zion, to a newfound hope, ready to rebel against those she once called comrades, and to Mother Sphere herself. Which leads us to the question, will Stellar Blade receive a sequel? Well, nothing is set in stone as of now, but going off of older news pre-launch, the director Kim Hyung-tae did express how important the reception of the overall game would be for a sequel to even be considered. Now, contrary to all the controversies and political noise that's been getting pushed as a result of our girl Eve just being too thick, this is truly a good game, and one that I haven't been able to stop playing. Looking at many of the reactions online from people who genuinely wanted to give it a fair shot really seem to be having a good time with it. It also seems to have gotten one of the highest user scores for PS5 on Metacritic. So I'd honestly be very surprised if this game was just a one and done, but we'll just have to see. In so many ways, Stellar Blade did surprise me. On one side, it gave me exactly what I wanted as someone who had been rooting for this game ever since its first showcase. Of course, as a huge story person, I was a bit disappointed in how the story portrayed its characters throughout its 30-hour runtime. Again, these characters have so much potential that I feel could be fleshed out more. And what better way to do that than with a stronger sequel for such a solid base already? I'm really interested to see how Shift up takes this story and its characters and just goes even crazier on every aspect, especially in really doubling down on the quality of its narrative. Now that Adam is physically gone, it'd be interesting to see a new character or characters join Eve and Lily to fight back against Mother Sphere. But you tell me, what do you think awaits Eve beyond fate?